Before you even think about who he is, what he brings, or how he might fit into your life, the first and most powerful question you must ask yourself is, who am I? Because until you know yourself, until you understand your own identity, your own worth, your own values, and your own vision, you will always risk losing yourself in someone else's story. Too many people go searching for a relationship as if it is the missing piece of their life, but the truth is, if you don't know who you are, you will hand over the pen to someone else and let them write your story for you. And when that happens, you stop being the main character and become just a supporting role in someone else's script. Knowing who you are is not about surface-level answers. It is not about listing your job title, your hobbies, or your favorite foods. It is about digging deep into your soul and facing the truth of your own identity. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What kind of life are you building with or without someone beside you? These are not easy questions to answer, but they are the foundation of everything. A queen does not wait for a king to define her throne. She knows she is royalty before anyone else acknowledges it. When you know who you are, you develop clarity. Clarity is power because it prevents you from accepting less than what you deserve. Without that clarity, you may be tempted to settle for the wrong people, the wrong situations, or the wrong treatment. You may begin to believe that disrespect is normal or that mistreatment is love because you haven't taken the time to understand your own worth. But when you know yourself, your standards rise. You don't have to scream them out loud or plaster them on your forehead. You live them quietly but firmly, and people, especially men, recognize that strength. Think about it. If you don't know your own value, how can you expect anyone else to honor it? If you are confused about your identity, you will constantly look for validation outside of yourself. You will rely on compliments to feel beautiful, on attention to feel important, on relationships to feel complete. But when you know who you are, you no longer need constant reassurance because your foundation is solid. You do not crumble when someone leaves. And you do not break when someone disrespects you. Instead, you rise because you are anchored in truth. Knowing yourself also means embracing both your strengths and your flaws. Too often, people try to hide their weaknesses, thinking that perfection is the key to being loved. But the reality is, authenticity is more powerful than perfection. When you truly know yourself, you do not fear your flaws, you own them. You understand where you need to grow, but you don't allow those imperfections to define you. That kind of self-acceptance is magnetic. It shows strength, it shows resilience, and it makes people treat you with admiration rather than pity. When you know who you are, you begin to walk differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with a presence that is undeniable. Men can sense it instantly. It is not arrogance, it is confidence. It is not pride, it is awareness. A woman who knows herself doesn't beg for respect, she commands it without saying a word. And when she enters a relationship, she does so from a place of power, not desperation. She doesn't ask, will he complete me? She asks, does he complement the life I have already built? That difference changes everything. Self-knowledge also protects you from manipulation. When you lack identity, you are vulnerable to anyone who promises to define you. You will fall for empty words, shallow gestures, or temporary attention because you are searching for something outside of yourself. But when you are rooted in self-awareness, no one can sell you a lie. You see beyond the mask because you already know your own truth. You don't chase after people who don't see your worth. You simply keep walking because you know you are enough. This process of knowing yourself is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong journey. Every season of life will challenge you to rediscover and redefine who you are. Growth is constant, and as you grow, your sense of self will deepen. That is why you must remain committed to your personal development, to your vision, and to your purpose. The stronger you become in your own identity, the more natural it becomes for others to respect and honor you. And here's the truth: men, whether they admit it or not, are drawn to women who know themselves, not just because of beauty, not just because of charm, but because of presence. A woman who knows herself cannot be easily shaken. She cannot be bought, controlled, or diminished. That is intimidating to some, but inspiring to the right ones. It makes a man rise to the occasion because he understands he is standing in front of a queen. When you truly know who you are, you stop asking, well, what does he bring to the table? And instead you say, this is my table. Do you add value or do you waste space? That shift in perspective is the difference between being treated like an option and being treated like royalty. It all begins not with him but with you. Knowing yourself is the first and greatest act of power, and it is the foundation upon which everything else is built. The greatest mistake many people make is rushing into relationships or connections with a focus on the other person, constantly asking, who is he? What does he want? What can he give me? Without first asking, who am I? When you skip over yourself, when you bypass your own identity, you set yourself up to be shaped, molded, and even controlled by someone else's definition of who you should be. You cannot ask who he is until you are firmly anchored in who you are. Without that foundation, you will always risk being lost in the reflection of someone else's mirror. Knowing yourself is the single most powerful defense against losing yourself in a relationship. If you walk into someone else's world without clarity of your own, you will adapt to their rhythm, their desires, their expectations while silencing your own. Slowly, you will begin to measure your worth by their attention, their affection, their approval. And when that fades, you are left empty, questioning who you are without them. This cycle happens because the first question, who am I, was never answered. When you know who you are, you carry identity like armor. It is not about arrogance. It is about certainty. It is about walking into a relationship already whole, already complete, already secure in your own worth. That way, when you look at a man, you are not asking, will he complete me? Instead, you are asking, does he complement me? Does he align with the life I have already built? This shift changes the entire dynamic because you are no longer chasing value, you are choosing partnership from a place of strength. The danger of not knowing yourself is that you will settle for anything that looks like love, even if it is far from it. You will accept treatment that disrespects you because you don't have a firm picture of what you truly deserve. You will confuse attention with commitment and passion with respect because your own internal compass is blurry. But when you know who you are, your compass is sharp. You see through the illusion. You recognize the difference between words and actions, between charm and character, between temporary thrill and lasting value. This awareness protects you from being used, manipulated, or diminished. Another truth is that knowing yourself creates standards, and standards dictate treatment. If you don't have standards, people will give you whatever they feel like giving. But when your standards are high, when they are rooted in the deep awareness of your worth, others will either rise to meet them or remove themselves. Either way, you win because you are no longer bending backward to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You know who you are, and that clarity gives you the courage to say no without guilt, to walk away without fear, and to demand respect without apology. Self-knowledge is not about perfection. It is not about creating a flawless version of yourself before stepping into a relationship. It is about authenticity. It is about owning your strengths and acknowledging your flaws without shame. Too many people hide behind masks, presenting an image they think others want to see. But masks eventually slip, and when they do, the truth comes out. A woman who knows herself doesn't need to pretend. She doesn't need to act flawless. She is confident in her realness, and that realness is powerful. Men respect it because it shows strength, honesty, and courage. Knowing yourself also creates emotional stability. When you lack identity, your emotions swing with every external shift. If he gives attention, you feel love. If he withdraws, you feel worthless. If he praises you, you shine. If he criticizes, you collapse. That is the life of someone who has no internal anchor. But when you know yourself, your emotions are not dictated by someone else's behavior. You remain steady, calm, and confident no matter what. That kind of emotional control is not only liberating, It is deeply attractive. It shows that you are in command of your own life. And here's something important: when you know who you are, you stop asking for permission to be yourself. You stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. You stop shrinking your dreams to make someone else feel big. You live boldly, unapologetically, and authentically. That level of self-expression is magnetic. It draws people in because it radiates freedom. And it challenges men to step up, to respect, to honor, because they recognize that they are dealing with someone who cannot be broken down or controlled. This process of self-discovery is not a one-time event. It is a continuous journey. With every experience, with every challenge, with every season of life, you uncover deeper layers of who you are. It requires reflection, honesty, and the willingness to face both your strengths and your weaknesses. It demands growth, and growth demands discipline. But the reward is priceless: clarity, confidence, and the power to walk through life with your head high and your standards unshakable. When you skip this step, when you focus more on who he is before knowing who you are, you give away your power. But when you prioritize yourself first, everything changes. Men treat you differently, people respond to you differently, the world sees you differently. Because you are no longer a reflection of someone else's definition, you are the definition, you are the standard, you are the one who sets the tone. And only those who respect that identity are allowed close enough to share space with you. One of the most powerful truths in life is that identity shapes destiny. Before you ever attempt to discover who he is, before you invest your time in analyzing his character, his ambitions, or his ability to lead, you must be absolutely grounded in knowing who you are. Too many people go into relationships with their focus turned outward, constantly asking, what kind of man is he? What are his intentions? Will he treat me right? But when your attention is only on him and never on yourself, you miss the essential foundation. Without a clear sense of self, you cannot judge what aligns with you, because you do not even know what you are aligning with. It all begins with self-awareness, self-definition, and self-respect. When you do not know yourself, you become easy to sway. You adapt to whatever he brings because you don't have a set identity to filter his presence through. If he is strong, you will follow. If he is weak, you may still follow because you don't have the clarity to discern the difference. This is why so many people end up trapped in toxic cycles, because they never stop to ask the hard question of identity. They kept chasing who he is while ignoring the critical step of understanding themselves first. But when you know who you are, you bring vision into every connection. You do not enter a relationship like an empty cup waiting to be filled. You arrive already full, already overflowing with confidence, clarity, and standards. This does not mean you do not value partnership. It means you do not confuse partnership with completion. You do not expect someone else to give you what you should already hold within yourself: identity, confidence, and direction. Knowing yourself also gives you the power of choice. If you have no foundation, you will accept whatever comes your way, even if it does not honor you. You will cling to relationships out of fear, desperation, or loneliness because you do not know who you are outside of them. But when you know yourself, you do not settle, you evaluate, you examine. You measure whether his vision aligns with yours, whether his presence adds value to your life, whether his actions reflect respect. And if the answer is no, you are strong enough to walk away because your identity is not dependent on being chosen. This is why people who know themselves exude a different energy. They carry an unshakable presence that others immediately notice. It is not arrogance, it is not superiority, it is certainty. Certainty in who they are, certainty in what they deserve, certainty in what they will and will not allow. And that certainty commands respect. Men recognize it instantly. They see it in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you hold your boundaries. They understand that this is not someone who will be easily manipulated or taken for granted. Another dimension of knowing yourself is emotional strength. When you lack identity, your emotions become unstable, reacting to every shift in his behavior. If he shows attention, you feel worthy. If he withdraws, you feel abandoned. If he compliments you, you feel beautiful. If he criticizes you, you feel broken. That instability is exhausting. and it leaves you at the mercy of someone else's mood. But when you know who you are, you no longer depend on external validation. Your emotions are anchored. Your worth is constant. Your peace is protected. You respond with calmness, with control, with dignity, regardless of what he does or doesn't do. And here lies another truth. Self-awareness creates higher standards, and higher standards change the way others treat you. If you do not know yourself, you will tolerate disrespect, excuses, and inconsistency. But when you know yourself, you immediately recognize what does not align with your worth. You don't argue for respect, you live in a way that demands it. You don't chase after love, you embody love within yourself, and the right kind of man rises to meet it. Authenticity also comes from self-knowledge. Too many people pretend to be what they think others want, only to lose themselves in the process. They dim their light, silence their voice, or shrink their vision just to keep someone interested. But that always backfires because you cannot sustain a lie forever. When you know who you are, you no longer play those games. You stand boldly in your truth. You express your opinions without fear. You chase your goals without apology. That authenticity may intimidate some, but it inspires respect from the right ones. This journey of knowing yourself is not something that happens overnight. It is a process of reflection, discipline, and growth. It requires taking time to understand your values, your passions, your strengths, and your weaknesses. It demands that you face your fears, heal your wounds, and embrace your potential. And as you grow in that self-awareness, your presence becomes stronger, your standards become higher, and your relationships become healthier. When you reverse the order and put "who is he" before "who am I," you risk building your life on unstable ground. You risk losing yourself in someone else's definition, in someone else's approval, in someone else's vision. But when you prioritize your own identity first, you stand unshakable. You know your worth before anyone else recognizes it. You honor your vision before anyone else contributes to it. You live as the standard before anyone else has the chance to define it. And only then can you truly see others for who they are, not through the lens of need, but through the lens of clarity. Before you ever allow yourself to ask the question, "Who is he?" you must be firmly rooted in the unshakable knowledge of who you are. If you do not have this clarity, every interaction, every relationship, and every expectation will be filtered through confusion, insecurity, and doubt. Without knowing yourself, you risk giving away your power and letting someone else define you. But when you do know yourself, you hold the crown firmly on your head and no one can take it away. Knowing yourself means understanding your identity at the deepest level. It means recognizing your values, your principles, your vision, and your boundaries. When you are clear on these, you walk into every relationship with a solid foundation. You are not desperate for approval, you are not begging for love, and you are not clinging to someone out of fear of being alone. Instead, you are whole within yourself, and that wholeness changes how you see the world and how the world sees you. When you know who you are, you protect yourself from settling. If you lack identity, you will confuse compatibility with convenience. You will mistake passion for love. You will accept inconsistency as normal. But when you have a strong sense of self, your standards rise. You no longer tolerate behavior that disrespects your worth because you already know what you bring to the table. You no longer accept crumbs of attention because you understand that your value demands consistency, honor, and effort. A powerful truth is that people treat you the way you allow them to treat you. And what you allow is directly connected to how you see yourself. If you believe you are unworthy, you will accept disrespect. If you believe you are ordinary, you will settle for ordinary treatment. But when you believe in your royalty, when you know you are valuable, when you carry yourself as a queen, others have no choice but to rise to that standard. Self-knowledge creates the boundaries that shape respect. Another dimension of knowing yourself is emotional independence. Too often, people enter relationships looking for someone else to stabilize them, to validate them, to heal them. But when you don't know yourself, your emotions become vulnerable to the actions of others. If he is attentive, you feel confident. If he pulls away, you feel abandoned. If he praises you, you shine. If he criticizes you, you collapse. That instability comes from a lack of inner identity. But when you know yourself, you anchor your emotions in truth. You remain steady whether others approve of you or not. You remain confident whether someone stays or goes. That calmness is a mark of strength, and it commands deep respect. Knowing yourself also brings clarity to your vision. Without it, you will try to adopt his dreams as your own, following his direction even when it does not align with your purpose. You will shrink your goals to avoid intimidating him, or you will silence your voice to keep peace. But when you know yourself, you protect your vision fiercely. You refuse to abandon your destiny for the sake of temporary validation. You invite a partner to walk beside you, not drag you off your path. This is the difference between living with purpose and merely existing for someone else's approval. Authenticity is another powerful fruit of self-awareness. People who do not know themselves often wear masks, trying to become what others want them to be. They pretend to be agreeable, to be smaller, to be less, just to avoid rejection. But masks are heavy, and they eventually crack. A woman who knows herself does not play this game. She is unapologetic about her truth. She speaks her mind without fear. She pursues her goals with determination. She embraces her flaws with honesty. That authenticity may drive away those who cannot handle it, but it attracts those who respect it. And that respect is worth far more than shallow approval. When you know who you are, your very presence changes. The way you walk, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, everything radiates confidence. You do not have to shout about your worth. You do not have to prove your value. You live it quietly but powerfully. And when people see it, they respond differently. Men, in particular, recognize the difference between someone who doubts herself and someone who is certain of herself. They know immediately when they are dealing with someone who cannot be disrespected, manipulated, or diminished. This is not to say that knowing yourself means you reject love or connection. On the contrary, it means you are finally ready for it. But you are ready in the right way, not from a place of need, but from a place of abundance. You do not ask, will he complete me? Instead, you declare, I am already complete. Does he align with the life I am building? That mindset shifts relationships from desperation to empowerment. You are no longer chasing someone to fill your void. You are choosing someone who complements your fullness. Self-discovery is a lifelong process. Every season of life brings new challenges that reveal deeper truths about who you are. Every trial, every victory, every setback, every achievement forces you to learn more about your strengths, your weaknesses, your resilience, and your capacity. But the key is to remain committed to the process, to never abandon yourself in the pursuit of someone else. Because the stronger your sense of self becomes, the more unshakable you are in the face of whatever comes your way. When you do not know who you are, you make the mistake of elevating the wrong people. You give them power over your emotions, your future, and your self-worth. But when you know yourself, the power shifts back into your hands. You choose wisely, you stand firmly, you walk boldly. And in doing so, you teach others how to treat you, not through words, but through the way you live, the way you set boundaries, and the way you honor your own worth. The truth is simple but powerful. Before you spend your time asking who he is, you must first be absolutely certain of who you are. Too many people move through life placing all their focus on the other person. What does he want? What does he bring? How will he treat me? While neglecting the foundation of self-awareness. Without clarity of your own identity, you will always risk molding yourself into what others expect rather than standing firmly in your own truth. The strength to attract respect, love, and commitment begins not with him, but with you. When you know who you are, you live from a place of power. You are not searching for someone else to define you, validate you, or complete you. You are not desperate for approval because you already approve of yourself. This changes everything about how you show up in relationships. Instead of chasing attention, you set standards. Instead of settling for less, you demand more without having to raise your voice. Instead of questioning your worth, you embody it every day in the way you think, speak, and carry yourself. The danger of not knowing yourself is that you will accept roles that do not fit you. You will adjust your values just to keep someone around. You will silence your dreams so that his voice is louder. You will compromise on your happiness just to avoid being alone. This happens because the identity within you is unclear, so you allow someone else to dictate it. But when you know yourself, you stop handing over that power. You stand firm in your beliefs, your vision, and your boundaries. You make it clear, without aggression, that you will not shrink to fit into anyone's small world. Self-awareness also gives you clarity in discernment. When you are uncertain about who you are, it is easy to be deceived by appearances. A charming smile, sweet words, or fleeting attention may feel like love. But when you know yourself, you see beyond the surface. You recognize the difference between temporary attraction and true commitment, between words and actions, between someone who entertains you and someone who builds with you. That clarity protects your heart and saves you time because you do not waste energy on connections that don't align with your vision. When you know who you are, you establish boundaries naturally. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are guardrails that protect your peace, your dignity, and your purpose. If you don't know yourself, you will let others walk over those boundaries, or worse, you won't have them at all. But when you know yourself, your boundaries become non-negotiable. You do not beg people to respect them, you enforce them simply by the way you live. That kind of confidence commands attention, and it forces others, especially men, to treat you with a level of honor they would not give otherwise. Another truth about knowing yourself is that it gives you freedom from dependence. You are no longer enslaved to the need for constant validation. You do not rely on someone else's presence to feel secure. You do not collapse when someone disapproves of you. Instead, you carry an internal stability that cannot be shaken by external factors. That independence is magnetic. It communicates strength, it radiates confidence, and it earns respect without you having to say a word. Authenticity flows naturally from self-knowledge. Too often, people pretend to be someone they're not because they are afraid of rejection. They hide parts of themselves, act smaller than they are, or try to fit into molds just to be accepted. But that is a recipe for misery because you cannot sustain a lie forever. When you know yourself, you don't play that game. You live fully in your truth. You are unapologetic about your dreams, your personality, and your standards. This authenticity may intimidate some, but it inspires the right people to draw closer. Men in particular recognize that they are dealing with someone who cannot be manipulated or diminished. And here is something powerful. When you know who you are, you change the question entirely. You no longer ask, will he like me? Instead, you ask, does he align with who I am and where I am going? That shift is monumental. It puts you in the position of power. You are not waiting to be chosen. You are doing the choosing. You are not chasing love. You are filtering it. You are not asking, will he give me worth? You are declaring, I already know my worth. Can he recognize it, respect it, and rise to meet it? This journey of self-awareness is not a one-time revelation. It is ongoing. Every season of life uncovers more about your character, your passions, your strengths, and your resilience. It requires reflection, discipline, and the courage to face yourself honestly. It demands that you grow constantly, that you challenge your own limitations, that you refuse to remain the same when you are called to more. The deeper you go into this journey, the stronger your identity becomes, and the more unshakable your presence will be in every room you enter. Without knowing yourself, relationships become dangerous territory because you risk becoming defined by them. But with self-knowledge, relationships transform. They are no longer about filling a void, they are about sharing abundance. They are no longer about desperation, they are about alignment. They are no longer about losing yourself, they are about growing together without compromising who you are. And that is why the first question must always be, who am I? Before you ever ask, who is he?